Welcome to Alpha Uncovered, the video podcast where we dive deep into the strategies and innovations shaping finance and asset management today. My name is Alvin Fan, the CEO of OP Investment Management, OPIM, the best #1 hedge fund platform in Asia. We have a very, very special guest with us today. We're going to be talking about AI, Mr. Simon Potter and Mr. Antoni Tsoi from BSP and ELab. BSP is known as Business Succession Partners. Gentlemen, am I getting this right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, so a quick breakdown of the two. So we're both managing partners at Business Succession Partners, and then I'm co-founder and CEO at ELab. And a little bit of background, Business Succession Partners is a private equity holdco, so looking at buying lower middle market industrial businesses across APAC, focusing on mainly industrials, but also going into other sectors with big focus on the succession side of things, which we can talk about a little bit more just to give a little bit of context. And then ELab is our AI transformation business. So basically, I founded ELab to look at the opportunities within AI. So what is it doing in terms of business operations? Where's the real value? And how can we apply that to our portfolio of companies that we're looking to buy and grow, both organically and through technology, but also the people and process innovation and optimization as well.
For the show today, Simon's brought over a few pints of Guinness for us. Thank you, sir. I think we talked about having the Guinness and a beer, a tall glass of something, because once we go into the rabbit hole of AI, it gets pretty philosophical. I think Antoni coined it right. I'm really excited about this conversation because this is actually will be the second or follow-on conversation that we had from a year ago, not on this podcast, but a really great call that we had when I was exploring different management teams. And when Simon introduced Antoni to me, we realized you were pretty early, although in a very fast-moving environment, into a space of what I, in many ways, regard similar to the HTML days. Systems integrators and what they called them back in the day. And today we're talking about transformation, AI transformation, specifically of asset management companies and corporates. And so a year ago, you were already building the first semi-agentic agents that would exist in an organization that would take over task-driven roles ranging from the big buckets such as marketing, investor relations, human resources. So let me stop there. Maybe you can give us a little bit of color of what your projects were at the time, and then we'll dive into where we are today.
So BSP, we've been doing it deal by deal for a decade. And so we decided to, once we had the track record, to start to institutionalize that business. And we go through acquisition as well as through organically and also optimizing and making businesses more efficient. I guess we were blindsided, like everyone else, by the growth in AI. AI has been around for a very long time in different formats, but the availability of it through large language models certainly gave everyone a bit of a sort of kick up the arse, excuse the expression. And for us, when we were operating these sort of traditional businesses, we were already experiencing the need for basic ERP, CRM systems, really easy fixes that smaller businesses in the environmental market hadn't really done. And so they were always trailing in terms of their technological efficiencies in the first place. But I wanted to go one step further than that and future-proof these businesses and put in the right tools. And so that when I was introduced to Antoni and he was talking about agentic AI and co-workers, I was very excited by this, obviously, from both a cost perspective, but actually also from people and processes perspective. If you can augment an individual and give them more time to do their day job and do the more important things, which I think are more human, customer servicing, business development, things like that, and really take away the boring, monotonous, robotic jobs, then that was of great interest. And so it was a sort of fortuitous timing that Shane, our third partner, introduced me to Ant, and he described what he was doing. And I said, well, I was a massive skeptic in this.
I was going to say, you said you were really excited at first.
Yeah.
But quote Simon, he started off and said, don't want to tell any of our investors or stakeholders about the AI side of things because it's a load of BS. And which was good because it then sort of laid down the challenge for us to cut through the hype and for me to demonstrate where the value was, albeit, you look back, 2 years ago when we were first really looking to apply some of this, when we were building out the whole co-processes and looking at how we apply it within the M&A space and the fundraising space. It's pretty embryonic and kind of embarrassing to think what we thought. We didn't call them agents. We actually called them co-workers.
Okay.
Because we were like, okay, the concept of the agents weren't quite there. But we thought, okay, we need to see these as augmenting our roles and having a true function within these workflows so that it's not just robotic process automation, taking a snippet can actually handle more complex decisions and handle parts of workflows. So that's how we started and eventually won Simon over probably by solving some of his more annoying problems, things that would take a lot of time and it was mainly in the investor relations space and then also marketing comms.
So what was this? What was the case that turned your opinion from hype to reality?
That's a tough one. There have been so many.
It was Maisie.
So Maisie. So I think first and foremost, everyone I know in the investment world, you do an awful lot of meetings, whether you're looking at a portfolio company, whether you're looking at a potential portfolio company, or whether you're looking to speak to new investors and so on. And so CRM has been the bane of all of our lives. I think we all agree that nobody likes coming home from a hard day of meetings and typing up all their notes into a static sort of the CRM solution. And people do it on paper, people do it in all different ways. And so it's very, I guess, mixed in terms of the quality of the data that you then input into the systems anyway. And so by implementing Maisie, which is our sort of executive assistant AI, all of a sudden I could just go into Slack on my mobile, or we have it in WhatsApp as well, availability, and I can just talk to my phone. And I can say, I just met with Alvin, he's interested in this, this, and this. And it would automatically populate our CRM. And for me, that the time saving on that, if I could do a 30-second or a minute a message, or because I've talked too much, maybe 1 or 2 minutes in some cases. But the reality is that alone saved me 2 hours, I reckon, of all of my days or all my weekends, even with my family. So I think that was a huge win. And then I suddenly opened it up and realized what you could do with due diligence, the amount of time you have to extract information from one format of a presentation or an Excel and put it into another because you need to put a banking report together or whatever it may be. Yeah. And I was suddenly saw weeks of work distilled into minutes. And from a time is value. And that is, for me, that's the biggest thing about AI. I don't want it to do my job for me. I just want it to save me an awful lot of time doing the monotonous stuff.
And if we look at that, what were the pain points that we solved there? It was, first of all, we actually had very poor records of our investor interactions. So we'd go and do these meetings and Simon's going and meeting with a ton of different stakeholders, with investors, partners, or even potential candidates, acquisitions. And he would have all of it in his head, some of it in notes, but I've never seen them. And then we would come on the meetings and be like, okay, what's going on right now? Where are good opportunities? Where are some good partners? It would get spilled out in the meetings and then it wouldn't go anywhere. If it did go anywhere into a CRM, it's only tidbits and it's very low fidelity information. It's just snippets. Whereas with the ease of being able to have a voice transcription solution within Slack, so it's on mobile when we're in the car or in the Uber or whatever it might be going from a meeting, you can do it immediately while it's top of mind. Yeah. And it's high fidelity information that we then take, and we can take that and then put it into structured data, that CRM structured data, and then feed that through to a database of high fidelity information. And I think that's the value, is you get all of this intel and insight. You actually, first of all, just get it, because you usually don't have that in a central area. It's usually in someone's head, which is also key person risk or tribal knowledge. And then you can consolidate that into a knowledge base where you can have true insights around where are your opportunities, what are your investor preferences, and then basically be able to make better calls on who do we prioritize, what do we focus on.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful, because one of the challenges with the second, I guess I would call it the last evolution of CRM, which is the Salesforce creating structured data and then tying it to interactions, is that a lot gets lost in translation. Yes, you have the record of an email, a call, etc., but extracting the insight from those opportunities is more nuanced. It does take a lot of interpretation. One thing that I found remarkable about some of the tools that we've been using, which you guys were much earlier in and we're only late to the game, is not only can we take unstructured into structured data, but the LLM can help us interpret the context of that data and maybe even provide insight on an opportunity that might be unspoken, or perhaps in the meeting, I didn't pick up the first time I spoke with the client.
Yeah, you're right. And we did have this grand idea to be like, oh, it would be amazing if we can then fully record that and transcribe it. But I guess the issue with that is you lose a lot of the opportunity to build the rapport and have an authentic conversation with someone if you're sitting there recording, especially if it's a potential investor or a potential partner. And so having something where you can still rapidly extract that information from your head and make sure it's timely and as much detail as possible is super handy, as well as not sitting there disconnecting because you're sitting there writing notes or typing something out on your iPad or laptop to try and make sure that you remember things within the conversation.
We have a policy now, not a policy, but a practice that I have with my business development. Advise them to give a script in the beginning and say, hey, Simon, so for this call, I hope you don't mind. I'm experimenting with a transcribe bot, and it's going to take notes so that we can work on just focusing on the conversation. Afterwards, I'll just send you the notes so that you don't have to take notes either. So it becomes dual beneficial to both parties, and they're able to take away something that's memorializing the meeting for both of us, right? And 9 out of 10 times they love it. I do get the occasional investor who's like, we're going to be talking about some sensitive stuff, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And then I can do a debrief with my AI afterwards.
It's right place, right time, isn't it? It's about having that judgment to go, okay, if we're sitting down over a coffee meeting and I'm throwing down a recording, maybe that's relevant. I mean, we do it all the time for our ELab clients because I want to sit here and be present and really unpack and discover and understand. Yeah. And I'm not Rain Man. I can't remember everything that we discuss. Whereas I find that if we transcribe that information and then we feed that back to whether it's a client or an investor or whoever it is, it's super valuable because and then that feeds through all the way through the project or the interaction to an extent where it will pick it up because we have AIs that help us with our delivery as well. It picks up a quote. And we had this with a project that we were delivering where it picked up a quote from somebody in operations when we were doing this full proposal strategy and report of these beautiful tidbits around somebody talking about a really key operational pain point. And I picked it out and went, that is absolute gold. And it had cited those throughout the report and I'd completely forgotten about them.
Yeah.
So that's super valuable. But going back to right place, right time, it's also about making sure that you know that you have to actually notify the person that you're actually recording. And I think it's etiquette to ask because there's nothing worse than jumping into a meeting and we have this all the time where like somebody's AI is already in the meeting and it's like, oh, hello AI.
Yeah.
Just you and me sitting here. And then somebody jumps on a call and there's no mention of the fact that it's being recorded, which actually is not legal.
Yeah, that part's not legal. Yeah.
You have to ask for permission. And there's a polite way to do that and give them the option so they don't feel that they're forced into it.
I think Zoom now has a protocol where it pops up and says this is being recorded, so it saves both parties from that situation. But even so, it's easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. But my wife notwithstanding, in this case, etiquette is to ask for permission. I noticed something even when we first met last year. You name your agents. So the IR agent and the marketing agent is called Macy.
Maisie, yeah. Maisie. Actually, Maisie's our management agent, and then we have Iris, which is investor relations that we've built out since, and then Mark, the marketer, which is very creative, and a few others. Yeah.
Why do you name them? Is there
twofold? I think one is that people much better remembering names and functions because they're used to dealing with that within the office environment. So I know Alvin is the boss. The reality is that. So I think it's a lot easier for people to talk to people or to personify technology because then they can relate to it. And we actually got to one stage where Shane, our partner, was sort of asking Maisie how her holidays were. It's because I was like, I think you're getting a bit too into this, Shane.
And Maisie was actually responding, right? That's the scary part.
But yeah, so I think personification, just familiarity, makes it easier for people to remember their job functions and roles and things like that because they're used to it. And then And apart from anything else, it's a bit fun, really. But when Iris needs more work or the marketer's got something wrong,
it's easier to talk about it as well, because I think we'll be like, oh, just do that with Mark.
Yeah.
Or do that, or get Maisie to do that. And I think it's also one of the key reasons why we did it initially there's probably three, but the first was around encouraging interaction with people who we weren't used to interacting with AIs and large language models. So people often don't understand that the way you interact and communicate with a large language model is very much like you communicate with a human, or an intern is probably the best way to describe, especially back then. We talk about a CRM transcription type solution, and that blew our mind back then. But now it's just like, oh, that's lame. Like everyone's got it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, it's a ticket to the game now. But looking at the other aspects of it, the way that we design them, and you go and build out an agent, and it's hard. I mean, they're not really. Some of these aren't actually agents. They don't need that complexity of tools and a whole bunch of additional functionality. They're just large language models that specialized or prompted with custom instructions and a knowledge base and content to guide you through a standard operating procedure. You don't need to have an agent for that a lot of the time.
Right.
So the reason that we named them, though, and had them in that specific function is the way that you train them or configure them is very much like the way that you would go and bring on a new employee or a new team member, or set up a new role within an organization. You define the standard operating procedure, you define the role and the boundary, you define the way that they interact and the expectations around inputs and outputs, and process flows and limitations and capabilities, and what's within scope and what they should consider out of scope for what they deliver. And then you also define the way that they interact with the user, whether it's to handhold them through the process or stop them from doing certain things.
I think when you said intern, that really struck a chord, because one of the challenges we had when we have middle management working with AI for the first time is they get very frustrated because the instructions that they give to the AI usually don't yield the result that they have. And if you listen to the temperament and the frustration that they have, it's identical to that they would have if I gave them an intern for the first time as well. Where it says, oh, this kid is from Stanford, he's really smart and he's got talent, but he just doesn't understand our business, right? Or he needs a lot of training. And so with AI, I find myself giving the same feedback. Say, hold on, this kid, let's call him Bobby. Bobby is, he's fresh. You got to give him a shot. You have to explain to him why he's doing this task. You have to show him yourself firsthand how it's done. And you might need to repeat it a couple of times before he gets the hang of it. But he's really smart. And he has a whole universe of information that he has access to, whether it be the internet and some basic training. So keep that in mind. If I take that purpose, like literally verbatim for the AI, you actually get better results. And so I think when I first heard that you were naming your AI,